welcome to WhiskyAngelz. I'm Max, and this week we'll be talking Brazilian whiskey production. We are joined by our very special guest, Whiskey Angel, André de Almeida. How did I do?
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good.
That was okay. Okay, good stuff. Who is from Inside the Cask Blog. Thank you for joining us today. WhiskyAngelz is the Cask Strength Chaos whiskey podcast you can listen to on all major platforms, as you probably are now. You can also watch us on YouTube and Spotify. So please do like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Okay, let's get started. Welcome, André.
Thank you, Max. Great to be here.
Good stuff. Okay, well, shall we just start with a little bit about Inside the Cask Blog? Yeah, so why and where did it all come from?
That's a good question. Inside the Cask started about 10 years ago. We're actually celebrating the 10 years this year. It started just as an idea to share some of the kind of inside information, news, job opportunities within the industry. And I literally bumped into a professional blogger for something else who told me, you know, you should put it out there on a website. Yeah. And that's how it all began. Within a week, that's how it all began.
Wow. Yeah. And it's quite an amazing site now because it actually gets a lot of industry people there. It's got job listings now for the industry and all this sort of stuff. So it's got a lot of depth.
No, exactly. I mean, it's not your typical whiskey website. It's not, it doesn't have product tasting notes or anything like that, which most whiskey sites, that's what you would have. But what we try to do is share general information that will help others out there from an insider's perspective, thus Inside the Cask.
Okay, fair enough. So one of the blogs that you've done in the past is on Brazilian whiskey, which when I read that, it was one of those kind of sit up and think moments of like, Brazilian whiskey, is that a thing? And apparently it is. And it seems like there's quite an appetite in Brazil for whiskey itself.
Yeah, whiskey is obviously not the number one drink in Brazil. If you think of Brazil, you're going to think of beaches, you're going to think of beer, you're going to think of, if you know, cachaça, which is, you know, made from the local sugarcane, but whiskey is up there. And in fact, Brazil is one of the countries that imports the most Scotch whiskey from Scotland.
So according to the Scotch Whisky Association, Brazil's key market, ranking 7th globally in 2024 with 52 million bottles exported, which was 22.8% increase from 2023. So it's a huge market for whiskey, which was surprising for me, but maybe it shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, exactly. So whiskey, Brazilians definitely have a taste for whiskey. They've had it for a long time, and they drink sometimes in different ways to how you'd imagine drinking here in Scotland. So on the beach, some people may have it mixed with fresh coconut water, for example, which I cannot imagine doing that in Scotland.
No. Generally speaking, the weather isn't there for it. It is a fantastic weather week today, it has to be said, which you can't see from in here. But the coconuts aren't commonly found in Scotland, put it that way. No.
So it wasn't until a few years ago that traveling through Brazil that I came across Union Distillery, which has been around for over 50 years. It's probably the largest whiskey distillery in Brazil, and that's what kind of led to going down the rabbit hole of Brazilian whiskey.
So tell us about Union then. What's the backstory there?
Yeah, so Union is a distillery that's been around for over 50 years. They originally did wine products. That's their kind of background, wine. They're from the south of Brazil, which is again where you receive a lot of Italian immigrants since the 1870s. And they since about 50 years ago, since the 70s, that's when they start focusing on single malt whiskey production. Yeah. They produce, at the moment, I think they produce around 2 million litres a year, which is quite substantial, especially for a whiskey from Brazil. Mm-hmm. And most of it's probably sold as bulk to other countries, to Japan, to Asia, to other places, to be mixed perhaps with.
Okay, so going into blends a lot of the time.
Potentially blends, but definitely not being marketed as a product in its own right.
Yeah.
At least not until recently. So It was around 2019 that the Brazilian whiskey really started to kind of boom, if you like, in Brazil, where one Union Distillery started to launch their own products again, and secondly, Lama's Distillery came into force.
Right. Okay. Because there was, I think in 2023 or something like that, the Scotch Whisky Association actually got Scotch malt whiskey recognised within Brazil, which protects it, but also will help and create a market as well for single malt.
That's what we hope for. Yeah. The reality is, being on the Brazil side and talking to importers and distributors over there, is that the regulators and the Brazilian government, to an extent, already treated Scotch whisky as a protected product.
It's now just formalised.
So it's just formalising what was in fact already happening before.
Right. Okay. And so we have some of the Union output here. Yes. It's not. I had a look online. It's not very easy to find and get hold of.
Yeah, no, you're not gonna. If you do, it's probably gonna be through a Brazilian friend or maybe someone else that's coming over from holidays in Brazil.
Yeah.
This one in particular is vintage 2005, so it's a 16-year-old single malt whiskey.
Yeah.
And probably the oldest single malt whiskey in South America, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Feel free to correct us if we're wrong on that. We're interested to know either way, but yeah. When it comes to making and producing whiskey in Brazil, is there a difference climate-wise that can have?
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the key differences is the angel share, so the evaporation when the liquid is maturing in the casks.
Yeah.
Whilst in Scotland, the expectation is around 1-2% loss.
Yeah.
In Brazil, because of the warmer weather, it will vary, but for Union, it will be between 6-7%.
Right.
So that's the amount that they lose on an annual basis.
Yeah. And I suppose being a big wine producing country itself, they've got access to various barrels as well, and unique barrels.
No, exactly. So Union themselves, about 10 years ago, they've relocated the distilleries. So they basically moved to be closer to the wine region of Brazil, in Bento Gonçalves in the south. And part of the reason for that is tourism, because you already have a lot of tourists going in that area.
Yeah.
And the second part is to be able to access more easily casks to be able to obviously mature their whiskies in.
Okay. Let us give it a go then. What has this been matured in? Is that so bourbon?
Yeah, so the full maturation in this case has been on bourbon casks. So it's the first fill bourbon casks. I would expect that there would be an element of fruitiness here.
Yeah.
And you should get the characteristics of the oak cask coming through as well.
And what strength is this then?
This is 46%? No, 48%.
48%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And bear in mind that in Brazil, you do have a limit on the alcohol content. So the highest amount you can put a product in the market, it's 54%.
Right, okay.
So not like in Scotland where you have independent bottlings, which in some cases can be in the high 50s, for example.
Yeah. Okay, let's give it a go. This is where we're silent on the podcast for several seconds.
Yeah, no, we just wish we could.
Right, that's true. We do it exactly. We're just going to describe now. But it's lovely golden colour. Oh, that's very rich, isn't it?
Yeah. You definitely get fruit, some of that richness that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Nice finish on the palate.
Yeah. Quite a dry. Is it a dry finish on the palate as well?
You get a bit of, I don't know, definitely a little bit dry. You get a little bit of.
I mean, you're getting a lot of fruit. I mean, obviously, you get kind of the vanilla notes as well coming through from the bourbon. You definitely get a little bit of a hit. I'm going to put a little bit of water in it just to maybe
to open up.
Just to open it up a little bit. See what we get. There we go.
Yeah, just don't drown the whiskey.
Yeah, no, just a touch. Just a touch. Yeah. It's quite light, actually.
Yeah.
It's very nice. It's fruity, but still got that refreshing aspect to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's accessible for those that can access it in Brazil in terms of price.
Yeah.
But you're right. The liquid is something that, okay, it's a 16-year-old. So we're talking about the oldest, but the reality is it's still a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Albeit you expect to have the cask characteristics coming through, the vanilla, some caramel, etc.
Yeah.
Because of also the faster maturation.
Yes. Okay. So this will have lost a lot of the angel share over the years.
It would definitely more than an equivalent 16-year-old Scotch.
Yeah. I think there'll be a lot of different things they can kind of experiment with then with the barrels in terms of over time. They've got a lot of opportunity.
They do. And what I find interesting is they experiment with the cask, but they are traditional in their approach. So they do follow the Scotch kind of regulations almost.
Yeah.
Albeit even the peated barley. So they produce some peated whiskey as well. And the peated barley actually comes from Europe.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because they're projecting huge figures for how much Brazil is going to basically be like the kind of the breadbasket of the world. Like 2050, they were projecting huge, ridiculous figures for being, and I don't know how much that stacks up now. It's like 40% of the kind of the required kind of grain crops would be coming from Brazil in the future.
Yeah, and definitely the malted barley comes from Brazil.
Yeah,
it's just the peated one that comes from Europe.
Yeah. So there is no peat. There is no peat in Brazil.
Not that I'm aware of. Some distillers in Brazil can play around with native woods that give different characteristics to the liquid.
Yeah.
But obviously that wasn't the case in this liquid here.
Yeah, and the what was it? The word for peat is turfado. Is that right?
Turfado.
Turfado. I quite like that because turf. Is, yeah. Turfado. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Okay. So that was that first one. Let's go on to Lunatic Asylum. So
Lunatic Asylum.
Yeah. So what's the story with that one?
So Lunatic Asylum is the first ever independent bottler in Brazil. So obviously independent bottling is something that's probably commonplace in the UK and Scotland, but it's not something that you see abroad as much. Obviously independent bottlers will take casks from different sources, from different distilleries, and add their own take on that, and potentially release a product that the distillery themselves haven't. In the case of Lunatic Asylum, it's two friends, Pedro Paiva, who has a distillery called Alba Distillery, who produces cachaça, rum, eau de vie, etc., and Rafael Nardi, who...
Alba as in Scotland?
Alba,
brilliant.
So they're based in the south.
Yeah.
Rafael is, his tag is Barman de Apartamento, but he's effectively a spirits educator.
Yeah.
And the two of them have got together to release these products. This one is a cask from Union Distillery, so from the same distillery that we sampled just before. But what they're looking to do is, to release products at a higher ABV, to make the higher ABV products available. In this case, it's 54%, which is the highest possible.
So that's as much as you can go. It immediately when you smell it, it's got such a richness to it. It's quite... Yeah, compared with the previous one, it's got a real
and this one is going to be
richness.
And it's going to be fresher. It's a younger whiskey,
it's younger,
albeit it's 11-year-old. 5 years difference, which when you're talking about fast maturation can make quite a big difference.
So this is still ex-bourbon, but from Union.
Ex-bourbon selected from Union, 11-year-old. Not for this one, this was the first release. But for future releases, what they've done is they've also taken advantage of the fact that they're based in the wine kind of part of Brazil to effectively take the cask from a distiller such as Union and then effectively recast it, put in a fresh cask from a winery on the same day. Which is something that in Scotland you wouldn't be able to do because you're receiving those casks from other parts of Europe, for example. From export casks, sherry casks, etc. So they're going to have extremely fresh wine casks.
Wow.
So I look forward to seeing what they've got to bring in the future as well.
Because that will, you'll get. I mean, this is something I don't know. I don't know what happens to a cask when it really comes in from
from a cooperage
or whatever, and then what happens to it? How much is it cleaned? Is it cleaned? Is there anything like that? And does what effect will that do on stripping out some of those potential flavors?
When you add whiskey to a cask, there's obviously different impacts that it has on the liquid because the cask can help to extract some flavors that you don't want. It can help to add something that you want to the whiskey. Obviously, it's a breathing tool, so it helps with the oxygenation of the liquid. Right? It impacts on the whiskey in different ways. That's what I meant to say. And therefore, when you get a cask, especially when you say in the industry a fresh cask, it basically means it hasn't taken long between being emptied off the fortified wine, for example, to then being filled with the whiskey for maturation or the new make if it's just produced. So you want to have as much of the impact of that what was there before into the whiskey.
Yes. So let's have a look at this one then. So specially selected cask. It's already imparted some of its magic to another whiskey somewhere else.
Yeah, this one, the only difference between this one and the previous one is obviously the shorter maturation. Both of them have been produced in the original distillery of Union.
Yeah.
Because the original distillery had shorter stills, which meant that the liquid, it's a little bit more robust than the current new make that they're producing.
Okay. So they've got slightly taller stills now, so...
Slightly taller now, and this one, you would maybe get a little bit more sulfur. We may not get it because it's 11 years, but that's what you used to get in the previous distillery that you don't get so much now.
Okay, let's give it a go. I'll let you give it a go, Slange. I'm making our producer very, very envious there. She's kind of watching in the background, us sipping the whiskey. We'll make sure you get a taste.
Yeah, it's slightly different mouthfeel on this one, I think.
Slightly more oily, just very slightly more oily, but
you do
finish.
I think it is that's what you'd expect. A little bit more robust than that one.
The cask strength there is pretty powerful as well.
Which that's the beauty of also drinking higher ABV whiskey, right? It gives you the option because ultimately you can always add
a touch of water.
Add a bit of water.
Yeah.
And in an ideal world, if we weren't doing this as a podcast, you also could leave the whiskey for a while and then come back to it. And obviously sometimes that also will make
opens it up or add a bit of extra oxygen to it. Yeah.
But such are the rigors.
It's got a really nice on the nose. It's really rich. I find that quite a powerful caramel sweet. Gets you going before you've even tasted it.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad that we tasted this one after the first one because otherwise this one it's a bit more.
It's got a little bit more to punch. it. Yeah. So, I mean, there'll be really limited numbers of casks that actually are from those original kind of shorter stills, I suppose, as well.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah. That's very nice. Beautiful.
This one here and this product that we're tasting sold out because obviously the other thing is independent bottling as a concept is quite new in Brazil, and therefore there's obviously quite a lot of interest as well between amongst the whiskey drinkers of Brazil.
Brilliant. Okay, let me press another button and we're going to start and look at the Desert Island Drram. Okay. Let me go and grab the Desert Island Drram. We now need to go and grab the actual bottle. Si, can you pass over the bits of packaging? I said, we promised Cask Strength Chaos, and in this case, we're just making sure we've actually got the right products available for us to look at. Let's put them down here. So, Desert Island Drram, which is the dram that you would want to find yourself on a desert island with. I wasn't sure about the title for that, but the other title I'd come up with was your death dram, which was the last dram that you'd want to have before you died, which I thought wasn't quite as more positive as the Desert Island Dram. So we're going to go with the Desert Island Dram.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so tell us about what's your Desert Island Dram.
Yeah, so obviously choosing a whiskey as your Desert Island Dram, it's almost like picking which one of your children is your favorite one, right? There's so many. Yeah. But in this case, I've tried to stick with Glen Scotia and Campbelltown. Okay. I have quite a close connection with Glen Scotia and Campbelltown. I've worked with the products before, and I really enjoy this style of whiskey produced in Campbelltown, not just from Glen Scotia, but from Springbank, Kilkerran, etc. as well. From a choice, from a palate perspective, I'm very much enjoyed the Victoriana, which is what we're going to drink today. Okay. But from an emotional perspective, the Glen Scotia Campbelltown 1832 release, which was created for travel retail, for duty free. Yeah. So for your airports and ferries and whatnot. Yeah. And I was involved in the creation of it. And one element.
Beautiful artwork.
Yeah, beautiful artwork. We've commissioned at the time a painting by an artist of Campbelltown. Okay. And it's just beautiful packaging. It's changed somewhat since I was involved almost 5 years ago. Yeah, yeah. But the liquid remains great quality. Yeah. But the reason why it's so emotional is also because as I was involved, I was able to influence a little bit on the colors and the colours are the colours of my football team in Brazil, Grêmio, which I don't think many people at Loch Lomond knew when I was involved in the project.
Yeah. But the famous player from...
Yeah, so Grêmio's most famous player is probably Ronaldinho, which most people know from Brazil. Yeah. And I actually had the opportunity to present a bottle to the president of Grêmio a few years ago in Abu Dhabi when they played against Real Madrid.
Okay, that must have been quite an experience.
Oh, that was fantastic. Doing it in my kilt with my Grêmio top and then presenting the whiskey was something else.
Brilliant. That must have been amazing. And the artwork is beautiful. You can see it slightly more on the blue here. It's just got beautiful details. So this is based on what? An 1870 kind of imagining, or 1800s imagining of
Correct.
what Campbelltown was like.
Campbelltown, back to the days when it was the whiskyopolis of the world, when they had, because at one stage or another, Campbelltown had over 30 distilleries. Obviously, that's kind of gone down over the years.
There's not many, is there? I mean, you've got Springbank, and you've got
Glengyle, Springbank, and Glen Scotia. Soon we're going to have a few new ones. This year, Witchburn is going to be a new distillery opening. So that, to an extent, is the kind of renaissance of Campbelltown as a whiskey region.
Great. Okay, well, let's give this one the Victoriana a try. Let's give that a whirl.
Okay.
So what is this? I'm now going to look at the packaging. So finest deep charred oak casks. And Glen Scotia, it's obviously near the water. So
near the water, because of the fermentation time, you're always going to get fruity notes with this one. But what they were trying to do when they created Victoriana was something akin to the Victorian times. So it's something which was more robust, more oily, a bit more of a punch than the current whiskies that you get in the region.
Okay. Let's give it a whirl.
They've had a number of different batches produced, but always kind of a similar style.
Yeah. Very nice. Quite a mellow.
Yeah. There's some oiliness. You get some of the smoke in the background a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite whiskies, Victoriana.
It's nice. It's a relaxing whiskey. It's one just to sip and enjoy and relax in the end of the evening, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's great whiskey.
Yeah. That's timeless, absolutely timeless. And the distillery itself, Glen Scotia, what's its kind of if you like unique points?
Well, Glen Scotia, it's one of the obviously surviving Campbelltown distilleries. It's recently actually increased in kind of size. I think it's now producing about 700,000 liters, which you remember what we're talking about the Brazilian distilleries producing 2 million.
Yeah.
So quite a contrast, a lot smaller.
Yeah.
And they produce some fantastic liquid, long fermentation, and again, trying to create these kind of robust, oily kind of whiskies. Some people talking about the influence of being near the sea.
Yes.
I'm always
not sure.
I'm not never sure.
I'm not getting the sea from that one at the moment.
No.
But and it's a very accessible whiskey itself. We've got Glen Scotia as part of what we are calling, if you like, our core range, if you like. It's not really a range, but it's basically allows us to focus in on different regions and try and choose one whiskey as a little bit of a reference pillar for that region. And so Glen Scotia's up there. The reason we'll get to the point where we actually do a proper tasting on some of these whiskies at some point, but part of it is so that we can use them as a reference, but they should also be at an accessible price point as well. And it was actually a bit of a struggle for Campbelltown to go, right, well, what's an accessible price point for whiskey for that? Because at the moment, Springbank, I can't get one for under £100.
No, exactly. Springbank, it's obviously the production is even smaller than Glen Scotia, and the demand is way over what they can produce. So that's why you struggle. So obviously you then have that relationship between price and demand.
Exactly.
But no, Glen Scotia accessible. You get in different channels. You get in supermarkets. You get in duty free. And it's a great product.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fantastic. That's very good. Okay. So I think we have drunk enough whiskey. Oh, well, maybe not. But for this time of day when we're recording it, it feels like we've drank enough whiskey. Thank you very much for joining us. How's that been for you?
No, it was great. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. It's nice to be able to talk about Brazilian whiskey and about fictional whiskey brands, topics that ordinarily you're probably not going to hear on most podcasts.
No, well, yeah, that's true. That's true. And I think part of it is trying to get some of the stories behind it. Because, I mean, when you've gone out to when you've been in Brazil, you must get a chance to hang out with the actual kind of the master distillers a lot and just hear what their dreams are for it. And I think something like what Lunatic are doing and what, what's the other one? I've forgotten it. Union. Union. Sorry, Union are doing. It's quite an exciting end of whiskey discovery, because a lot of whiskies will be trying to find ways to experiment. But I suppose if you're kind of a new distillery, you can go, well, I'm not necessarily about experimenting for the sake of experimenting. I want to try and make the best whiskey we can make.
Yeah, quality has to be first and foremost always, right? Which is why they have to source the best grain, the best materials they can.
Yeah.
But they also have to bring some of that local element, right, to the fore. It can't just be about trying to reproduce Scotland and Brazil.
it's got to be its authentic.
No, exactly. Roots. Which is why, obviously, in the case of Union Distillery, they are trying to connect with the wine region of Brazil because of the immigration of Italians and whatnot to the south of Brazil. And equally, Lamas, which I know we haven't touched on too much, but Lamas Distillery, which is much smaller, it's in the middle of the country. Their background is actually cachaça production.
Yeah.
So what they've brought to the fore is the types of casks which use native Brazilian woods on the maturation of the whiskies. So again, trying to bring a Brazilian flavor to combine with that Scottish tradition and heritage.
Yeah. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, great. Well, huge thank you to you. Please do go and check out Inside the Cask Blog. It's a great website. You kind of go in there and you'll be there for hours because there's just story after story. So do check that out. Also, have a listen to some of our previous podcasts. My personal favourite at the moment is the one that we did on the SS Politician, which sank with all that whiskey aboard. And I was actually speaking to a friend of mine just yesterday, and he said, my dad was there 3 months after it sank when he was a young man. And he was walking along the beach with a local shepherd, and the shepherd shoved his arm down a rabbit hole and went, here we go, this is my... And then he looked at it and went, no, this is McTavish's, this isn't mine. And he put his hand down, then he walked another 20 yards and he put his hand down another one, this is my one. So there must be so much whiskey buried on that island. Digressing, so please do keep up to date with us, subscribe and follow, and thanks to Simone for producing the show today, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Slange. Let's do a slange. Slange.